There is power in personal stories. It connects us, it empowers us, and it holds us accountable. It creates understanding and expands our perspective. This is Big in the Community with Jonathan James at the Kalamazoo Promise, a podcast aimed to highlight local leaders, collaborators, and innovators in the greater Kalamazoo community. In this episode, I sit down with team members from Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. We talk about barriers, policy changes, and other inequalities that immigrants are facing in our country right now. All right, welcome back. We're here for another episode. It's going to be our last episode for the year, and we're actually going to take a little pause and see how we're going to do things moving forward. But it's great that we have you guys here from Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and I'm going to have you guys go around, introduce yourselves, and we'll get started.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. My name is Susan Reed, and I am the director of the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, or MIRC, as we like to call it. And I'll hand it to Noah.
Hello, I'm Noah Aleman. I am one of the paralegals who is also a Department of Justice accredited rep at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center.
And hello, my name is Elizabeth Santana, and I am the managing attorney out of our Kalamazoo office here at MIRC.
Nice. Thank you for being here. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. It's winter and it's dry out, and I just can't get over the cold right now. Not sick. I just, got a little something going on. That's not an illness. But if each of you could describe your work in one word or a short phrase, what would it be and why? We can go the other direction.
I feel like I want to tap Susan for that one first.
Justice for all.
Empowering our community.
It's difficult, but worth it, I would say.
I like that. So, Susan, you've been with MIRC for 17 years?
That's right, Jonathan. We say MIRC at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. And yes, MIRC is the same age as my daughter. We started with one full-time employee right here in Kalamazoo, and that was me. And I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and now she's a junior at Loy Norix and about to graduate and use the Promise.
Wow, that's awesome. I'd say go Knights, but I went to Central, so.
Okay, well,
no
hard feelings.
It's go Giants over here. I'm sorry. No, but that's awesome. What originally drew you to immigration justice work?
Yeah, I grew up in the western suburbs of Milwaukee in a very Catholic community, and I definitely felt the immigrant heritage of so many people in our community, but it was a few generations back. But I really noticed that for Spanish-speaking people in our community, immigration was a more current reality, and just really wanted to do some kind of work that was in solidarity with Spanish-speaking people, as I saw a lot of the injustice, a lot of the racism that part of our community was facing. And so one thing about, I think, being a social justice ally is that you should get a skill. I spoke Spanish, but it really doesn't help anyone to be able to speak to me. I wanted to be able to share a skill to be in solidarity, and so really identified the immigration system as one of the ways that that the Spanish-speaking community in the U.S. Was confronted with so much systemic racism, and so I went to law school and began pursuing opportunities to work in the public interest with the community.
Wow, Noah, Elizabeth, what about you two?
Yeah, so what got me started at MIRC, I would say, is the legacy of my grandparents who immigrated to this country. These are my dad's parents. And I remember growing up just, constantly asking my dad to tell me stories about his childhood. And it was a lot of, hardship, struggle, barely getting by, but also a lot of community building and being help and helping others. And when I discovered MIRC, it felt like I could see my grandparents' legacy and the help they provided, but also in our clients and sort of the struggles they faced. And so it's on both the work that we do and the clientele that we serve, I feel lines up with that legacy. And so that would be, I would say, my motivation, my inspiration there.
Okay, nice.
I think I'm similar to Susan. Growing up, a lot of my friend groups were Latino or Mexican. And so I always knew that I wanted to be an attorney, and then being around all of my friends and then seeing the struggles that our immigrant community faces on a daily basis really kind of gave me that purpose to go to law school, finish it out, and become an immigration attorney. Prior to coming to MIRC, I also worked with farm workers in employment labor rights, and so it's always just kind of been a passion of mine. And yeah.
That's awesome. It's it's nice when people can take their passion or something that they truly care about and actually have a career in that. But also just, it's a very important work that not everybody pays attention to, but also maybe don't value. So I really appreciate the work that you do. And I'm sure like there's other people that also feel the same way. What experiences solidified your commitment to serving immigrants and advocating for systemic change?
So MIRC is a statewide legal resource center for Michigan's immigrant communities, and we have 5 offices around the state. All our services are free. And really for me, it was just seeing the lack of access to attorneys in a system that is more complicated than I think anyone who is not up close to this system cannot imagine the overwhelm. You asked what experiences. I'll give you one from 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Right. On my way over here from across the street, we're right above Sarkozy Bakery in the Columbia Plaza building. At like 12:15, I picked up the phone and took a call from someone at a church, local church, saying they had someone who had been picked up by ICE in Montana while they were on a trip, falsely accused of a traffic charge, but turned over to ICE there, spent weeks in detention in the western United States, had a court date next week in Arizona, but a different set of reporting that they had just done the day before in Detroit. And to the advocate was kind of saying, well, I really think probably they just have to go back to Detroit now. And I had to say, oh, no, they have to be in Arizona again next week. And there's nothing they can do about it. And for that advocate who might be used to systems working for people a little better, I could hear the person needing help next to them saying, no, I think I have to go back to Arizona. They were right. They're from an immigrant community. That was believable to them. But to the advocate, I think it was like kind of unbelievable. I've done tax law. Tax is easy breezy, no big deal compared to the immigration system. And so watching people be taken advantage of by unscrupulous providers, whether they're attorneys or not, watching people beg and borrow their family's last dollar, to pay an attorney, knowing that the very few nonprofit service providers that existed at that time, 17 years ago when we started MIRC, were in a position to take many cases. All kinds of experiences like that just made me want to grow and gather resources to serve more people and to walk alongside more people in the system.
I think to add to that too is that the system isn't broken. It was intended that way. And so I think for a lot of people, that aren't in communication with the immigration system or to know the community, I think they just have certain ways of thinking as well of, just do it the right way is what people hear all the time. And it's not simple or straightforward or normal like that. And individuals appear for hearings, they appear at appointments, and they are just they're picked up and taken away without any thought or communication to their family not knowing where the individuals are. It's all just a lot happening at once.
Wow.
Just to echo the fact that there is that necessity for legal representation, when I see clients move to another state, there isn't always a MIRC, for them to be connected with. And so I think it really is an important organization here in Michigan. And so I think that really is what lights the fire for me.
It's like just hearing like how difficult that would be. Like I need to show up in another state across the country. The system being built that way, that it is that difficult. I've had very limited experience like with court or with lawyers and things like that. And the experiences that I have had, I was like, this is expensive. This is difficult. I kind of feel lost. Like I don't even really know what I'm doing. And a lot of, even what took place, it was really just the lawyer speaking for me. And then there were times where like they would go in and deliberate and then just come back and tell me what happened, like what the result was. And, I guess I'm considered highly educated and, have a good job and all those sort of things. I was born here and had educated parents too. And for me to find it that difficult or that being that lost, I can only imagine if there was a language barrier, there was any other sort of barriers that could be there. I can only imagine how hard that would really be. So I'm just trying to make it make sense for people who are listening. That's like, this is a very serious, very difficult thing that people have to deal with. And it's, the cards are really stacked against them. So,
well, just to respond to that, Jonathan, I mean, there's a judge on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals who famously described the immigration process as death penalty cases in traffic court. And that's really a powerful way of saying that people are really getting pushed through a system that is not meant to recognize them and give them full consideration and full dignity. And so to an advocate in that kind of, I mean, Noah said earlier, right, it's difficult but worth it. It's very difficult to be an advocate, but the only thing more difficult, right, is being one of our clients. And so, wanting to be there is so important for that reason. And then we're also really lucky, we stand on the shoulders of a lot of people from a civil legal aid tradition, from a public defender tradition, where we really get to walk alongside with our clients and partner with our clients. And we are a law firm, but we're a little different maybe from some other law firms. Our goal really is to partner with our clients in achieving their goals. And it makes us a little different from other nonprofits as well, because we always talk about accountability in the nonprofit sector. How do you make sure the program you're designing is a program that's really wanted or needed by the people who are most affected by the issue you work on? We get to answer the phone all day long. People want a lawyer. They want our services. They want what we do. We're not sitting around thinking up, what could we do to change something, right? The community knows what they need, and they know what they need to change their situation or to stabilize their situation. And what they want is an immigration lawyer or an immigrant rights lawyer, and that's really a privilege.
So just kind of going off of that, what would be the process? Like if I was someone who was seeking help, what would that look like?
Sure. Elizabeth, do you want to respond to that one?
Sure. In general, so the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center does have an intake line that is manned 4 days a week, I believe 9 to 4. And I don't have that number off the top of my head.
It's 734-239-6863.
Susan knows everything.
It's also at michiganimmigrant.org with all of our intake info.
Yes, so definitely check out our website. Tons of helpful information, flyers, and our Preparing Your Family guides, which are a staple in this current climate. So we have our intake line where individuals can call and receive information, general information, or to see if we're able to take their case on in one of our 5 offices. We have offices in Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Detroit, and Ypsilanti. And also, we also take cases on an individual office level. So if individuals do end up coming to our office. That's one way. We also offer office hours at El Concilio once a month, where individuals can get free 30-minute consultations for anything about immigration or their individual cases. So, that's some of the ways that you can access our services.
We're also the only free call from immigration detention in the state of Michigan. So we have a detained line that comes in directly from the North Lake Correctional Facility in Baldwin, the Calhoun County Jail, and then 3 other ICE contract jail facilities where people are taken if they're arrested by ICE. And then we represent right now all unaccompanied children in federal custody and many released from federal custody. And those cases come directly to us from organizations like Bethany Christian Services and Samaritas who run those federal custody programs. So there are several different doors that our clients might come through.
Nice. You've mentioned like a few other organizations. Are there any other, like, what does collaboration look like? That's a buzzword in nonprofits. How do you collaborate with other organizations? Are there any other organizations you want to give a shout out to too?
Yeah, El Concilio is really one of our biggest partners, and they always show us that they would like to have us in the building every single day, and we would like to be there every single day. But once a month is what's working right now. We also we work with the Refugee Resource Collaborative. We work with others, Elizabeth, who you want to lift up? Bethany and Samaritas.
Bethany and
obviously,
Samaritas are big ones that we work with in the children's teams. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are many, many other great organizations that my mind is just blanking on right now as well.
A lot of congregations, that have clients or that have congregation members that have community needs. More and more congregations interested in getting into immigrant solidarity work. Yeah, just a lot of different kind of ad hoc collaborations.
That's awesome. So I guess what's one myth or one misconception that the community often has about immigrants or maybe the legal process, and that you wish more people understood?
I can start with one specifically from the children's perspective and just in general. In immigration proceedings, unlike criminal courts where, it's really a similar parallel, like your life is in danger or your freedom is in danger in a criminal context because you could end up in jail time, the same in immigration context as well, because you might be returning to a country where you are escaping violence and potential death. And in the immigration courts, while you have the right to have an attorney with you, it is not a right to have a free attorney. So they can provide you lists or you can go pay an attorney, but none will be provided to you. And so that often results in children who, I think our youngest client was 10 months old at one point, but children that are toddlers literally appearing in court by themselves and expected to answer questions and talk to the judge and defend themselves against the immigration system. And I think that reality of that situation is lost on so many people.
I think another big one, right, is, why don't people apply for citizenship or why don't people get in line? And for the vast majority of undocumented people in the U.S., there is no line to get in. There's nothing someone can apply for. It doesn't matter how long they've lived here. It doesn't matter that they have U.S. citizen children. So, often it's people who I might think that I disagree with who are saying, why don't you just get your citizenship or why don't you get in line? But I kind of like to flip that in my head and think, oh, well, you must agree with me. People should be able to get in line. So let's reform the system. Let's change it now. Let's create a line. If you think of it that way, right, there's a lot of consensus around something that's very contentious.
Man, this is some tough stuff we're talking about right now. I guess one question is just how does your team balance that the crisis-driven work, the things that come up, rapidly, with those long-term systems changes?
I feel like our team does a really good job of just staying in communication. We have a lot of group chats, but just collaboration, team meetings, staying in the know because there are quite a few changes that will happen, day to day. And so it's just that communication structure I think that we have, and the, you know, the closeness, I would say, between coworkers. It's a pretty regular thing just to kind of poke my head into somebody's office to ask a question or, you know, debrief or, you know, just sort of run some ideas by them. And so I think just having that office setup and the communication setup has been really helpful.
I think it's that's our local office setup, but I think it goes even further than that. We have communication among all of our offices. We have communication among other advocates in other states all across the United States. So, you know, it is kind of that tiny but mighty community in a way, where we're constantly sharing updates and talking about, you know, what's it looking like over in California, what's it looking like here in Michigan, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm our statewide director, and I do a lot of planning, and then we very frequently decide not to do the plan because something has come up, right? Mm-hmm. And again, just to have it be very real, you know, over the Thanksgiving weekend, there was a terrible tragedy, the shooting of National Guard members allegedly by someone from Afghanistan. And the president announced that all people from Afghanistan would be punished through the immigration system because of that event. And we worked very hard for several years to get everyone in the Kalamazoo area who was resettled from Afghanistan after the fall of Kabul through several important steps in the immigration system that were not completed for them when they first came because of the haste that their evacuation had to happen. Now, these are people who overwhelmingly were people who worked to further the U.S. mission in Afghanistan, who worked directly with the armed forces or other units of government and then had to be evacuated to save their lives. And again, the president is now saying that those very people will be targeted for exclusion and removal from the country. That is a sector of our community that in one weekend experienced fear, destabilization, confusion. And so, you know, on Thanksgiving Day, I'm texting Elizabeth, right? Like, we're going to need to put a community meeting together as soon as we can. And we're going to need to share with people, well, sometimes things are said and no action is taken. Sometimes actions are taken and they can be undone. And overwhelmingly, nothing has changed just because some tweets or some truths came out, but we're going to stay in relationship. We're going to stay in conversation. Now, I never could have planned, right? I never could have made a plan that would have anticipated collective punishment of people who worked to further the U.S. mission and people who were brought here, but that's what happened. And so I think because of the volatility, because of the way this system is weaponized, especially now, the system has always been set up to protect and promote white dominance in the U.S. I mean, that's just the history of the system. And I used to have kind of a hard time convincing some people of that, but I don't think it should be hard now. Again, when you see a whole group of people being collectively punished for the actions of one person because of shared nationality, it shouldn't be hard to know what's really going on. So I think, yeah, that's the answer to your question is we plan and we plan and we plan, and then we frequently plan not to do the plan.
I think the biggest thing about this last year is that I always tell people, you know, you have a question. If you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have had an answer. And this year, there's just so many change after change, and exactly like Susan was talking about, in ways to weaponize or to use a system against individuals who are already marginalized, excuse me. And so, yeah, I think it's just such a big thing that we want everyone to know.
You know, Noah mentioned earlier he's a U.S. Department of Justice accredited representative. So that means he's one of our paralegals. He's not an attorney, but he has done a level of training and shown a level of experience that allows him to represent people in certain matters before the immigration court or the immigration agencies. And when you think about how remarkable that is to have that skill and that ability without having had the benefit of going to law school, think about this. Since January 20th, there have been 542 immigration policy changes. So every single one of our several thousand clients might be impacted by one of those 542 events that have taken place. And so we're all always working as a team to try to keep up with the information, to try to understand how it affects our clients and our communities and communicate it out.
I just want to shout out to Noah, too, who came to this podcast from court.
All right.
Wow. Double duty today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So for your team, what does your team look like? Is it you three? Are there more team members? And then, like, who else do you work with directly for MIRC?
Sure. You want to talk about the Kalamazoo team, folks?
Yeah, so on the Kalamazoo level, we have a staff of around 17 individuals, and that's a mix of attorneys, paralegals, supervising program coordinators. And so on a daily basis, we're all doing casework in one way or another. So direct case handling by our Department of Justice accredited representatives and our attorneys. A lot of policy work as well. And then, Susan, you want to talk about kind of in the broader context?
Yeah. So again, we have our 4 other offices statewide, and we have, again, the same basic mix of staff in those offices, but we do a lot of state-focused policy advocacy. So we have lots of partners, different organizations who do federal policy immigration advocacy, and obviously that's the big thing you think of, right? Like, this is a policy that's driven and controlled by federal agencies and by the federal executive. But when you are not a U.S. citizen, whether you have status or not, that non-citizen condition affects every other legal right that you have. So if you're undocumented but your kids are citizens, you may be uncertain about whether you can file for divorce or child custody if the other parent's a citizen, right? You may be unsure about whether you as a head of household can apply for public benefits. You may be unsure whether if you do that, it's going to affect your ability for citizenship down the road. You may not be sure if you have a temporary status, if you can get a mortgage, or if you can enter into a long-term lease. Or your landlord might not be sure, or your banker might not be sure. Everything that someone who's a citizen takes for granted gets a question mark when you're a non-citizen. And there's actually quite a bit of legislative and administrative activity relating to immigration right now, and always to some degree in the state legislature and the state administrative agencies. So we really focus our policy advocacy on those state issues. So, for example, if people were to follow us on social media, you'd see action alerts mostly about things happening in the state of Michigan. And so we have a policy coordinator and a communications coordinator who I work with closely. We have a pro bono coordinator statewide who helps get volunteer attorneys involved in serving our clients. And then we have a statewide leadership team that just really works to support everyone.
Sounds like it takes a lot of people to get this work done. So as far as Kalamazoo, what keeps you in Kalamazoo? What brought you to Kalamazoo? Just like if there's anything specific to here that you'd like to share.
You brought us to Kalamazoo. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm MIRC employee 1. We started with one-year grant from the Michigan State Bar Foundation and a small grant from the Arcus Foundation back when they were across the street. Really the goal was to increase access to legal services and then do more policy advocacy for immigrants and immigrant communities. And from that one-year grant and that one full-time employee who was me, we've really grown. And so I think something really special is that a lot of organizations like ours in other places, they started in the big city and maybe put a few feelers out to smaller kind of outstate places, right? Mm-hmm. But we started in Kalamazoo. So I had worked with Farm Worker Legal Services and worked with the United Methodist Church in Grand Rapids on immigration issues, and I already lived in Kalamazoo. And I had bought a house in January of 2005, and the week after that, the promise was announced. So I absolutely have never left Kalamazoo, largely so that my 2 children could benefit from the promise.
That's awesome. Yeah. 20 years later.
Yeah.
Wow. No, what about you?
When it comes to Kalamazoo, I have a lot of love for it because my dad spent a significant part of his career teaching at KPS. And so, just a lot of love shout out to Arcadia Elementary School.
Okay. Nice. I guess, where do you see the intersection of immigration, education, opportunity? What are ways that, other organizations we can maybe partner better with you guys?
I'll say, I think of Noah's dad. Noah mentioned his dad teaching at Arcadia all those years, and Noah's dad's someone I've known long before I knew Noah because of his advocacy for his students. And his advocacy for his students, very much grew out of a family tradition, right, of caring for and being concerned about people who are either migrant farm workers or immigrants. Noah, I don't know, I'll just embarrass you. You're from kind of a famous family in Van Buren County. You have the Aleman Center at Immaculate Conception Church in Hartford that Noah's grandparents, named for Noah's grandparents. And are there 12? Did they have 10 or 12 kids?
Final count was 15.
15? Okay. Well, Noah's dad and 14 aunts and uncles are really great people who I've also known throughout my whole career. But I think the reason I mention the example of that family and Noah's dad Alfredo is just that I think just having that awareness that what might be going on for someone is like some insecurity or some concern around citizenship and immigration status. And the more you can learn about how that might affect someone, the more you might be able to support them. And so, I think whether it's formally partnering with us or just using all the resources that we have, we're on kind of the big 4 social media platforms. You can sign up on our website for our newsletter. But when I think of some really key professionals who in KPS, some teachers I know, people who really make it a point to think to themselves, and obviously you got to be careful. You can't be asking people their immigration status, but really make a point to think to themselves, might this student or this family benefit from a connection to MIRC? Might what's really be going on here be some kind of fear or concern about immigration status? Is there an opportunity to do a training? Is there an opportunity to grow in our knowledge of how this is affecting people? I would just really urge that kind of intentional solidarity and that kind of real presence of mind around how these issues might be affecting families right now.
It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all, I think is really when I'm talking about this, I think what I want people to know as well. So I think a lot of the times, especially when we're thinking of high school age children, there's guidance counselors who are taught to help the kids and they have like certain pathways that they, go to college, do this, and some of those options might not be available to everybody. And like what Susan was saying there, maybe a child is struggling because of food insecurity. And so a generic response is like, okay, are they eligible for benefits? Can they go get that? But it's not that one size fits all scenario that applies to our clients.
So I'm processing everything that you guys are talking about. Without sharing any specifics or names or anything, are there any moments or any stories like during your work that just kind of stick with you, or just like maybe illustrates the work that you do and why it matters?
I can talk a little bit. So a lot of the work that we do is working with immigrant children. So as Susan mentioned, we represent the immigrant children in federal foster care throughout the state of Michigan or release the sponsors in the state of Michigan. And I think that just something that always sticks with me is just the humility and the willingness of our clients to keep fighting for, a better future or their life or, whatever it is that is driving them every day, but they keep showing up. They are positive. They make the best out of every situation. And you can't help but, want to be there with them as they are fighting for all of that. And yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm just struggling on how to voice that feeling of just wanting the best for our clients, wanting the best for our community, and seeing them make the best out of every situation that's thrown at them.
I think they call that making a way out of no way in the African American community, and I think we see a version of that so often, and that's really a privilege.
I've heard that before. Noah, you got anything that you want to share as far as like, you know, moments that stuck out to you or stories?
Yeah, it's, I guess, hard to figure out how detailed I want to get, but just one of my clients, just the advocacy that she's been doing for herself, she's got, or it's been necessary for her to sort of express her wishes and really let shelter staff know, because she's currently in a shelter, and just the self-advocacy that she's done at, you know, her age. I can't imagine moving to another country and, you know, being put in that situation, and so I think it's a very humbling experience to just put yourself in their shoes, even for, you know, best as you can. But yeah, it's a very just humbling experience all around. So just gives you a lot of pride, and it makes you want to keep on with their case.
It's good stuff. It's there's something about, like, I have this personal thing where I wish people who have so many barriers and so many things going on with them that they didn't have to be so resilient. Like we talk about, like, you got to be resilient, you got to, you know, work that much harder, but it's like it frustrates me that you have to work that much harder than other people. And then hearing about all this, I'm like, and I was upset about, you know, just being black in America, you know, like that. And then to think, oh, there's even worse situations. And as hard as that is, like, learned over like the last 4 years working here in nonprofit space is recognizing privilege, and then recognizing my own privilege, and then seeing how resilient people are despite what's going on with them. And it's even more than, you know, what I was dealing with. It kind of makes what I was dealing with seem but to see that, it really it motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing, and helping in the ways that I can. But then to hear like all the things that you guys are going through, advocating for people, and just, I wish we could get to a point where we don't have to advocate as much. We don't have to be as resilient. We don't have to do all these things that are so unfair or so many challenges. But it is inspiring to see what people will go through and get out of, regardless of what's put against them. So I don't know what that was, some sort of
No, I
tangent.
hear what you're saying. I mean, we don't want to make it like, I think they say, the oppression Olympics, right? Like different groups experience oppression in different ways. And, you know, I think when we bring forward these particular struggles of immigrant communities, it's not to say that, you know, it's worse than someone else's struggle, but it's really just to open up and share how different it might be, or the dimensions of it. And sometimes I think like, oh, am I like romanticizing my clients or generalizing when we talk about like how awesome they are? But honestly, I don't think we are, because one thing that's kind of interesting, I think about most of our clients who are immigrants they're kind of a unique group. Like they're people who to some degree like self-selected to move to a new country, to escape or flee or travel. And I think it does create to some degree kind of a unique dynamic in immigrant communities. And that is why it's so frustrating, right, to hear national leaders say, oh, these are people who don't have any particular value, when these are some of the greatest strivers in the world, right, who've looked at a situation and said, well, we're going to try something different, or we're going to survive in a different way. So I do like to check in with myself about exactly what you said. Like, people shouldn't have to be so resilient. I do get very frustrated with the fact that, like, it doesn't have to be this way, right? Like, if we were the Michigan Immigrant Oncology Center, it would be like, yeah, people get cancer. Nobody really, you know, we've got some treatments, but nobody knows the cure. the cure for the harm that this system does to our clients is like, it's very simple. None of this has to be happening. The detention, the deportation, the breaking up of families. We could have a practical, pragmatic system if we could just move in the direction of fairness, move away from that need to protect and promote white dominance, move away from the idea that the groups pushed to the bottom of our society should compete with each other and fight with each other. It does not have to be like this. And the only thing that I think gives me hope is as we see this new extreme version of a struggle that, you know, we've all been walking alongside communities with for so long, as we see this new extreme version of it, I hope it's waking some people up to the idea that, like, it does not have to be like this.
Knowledge is power right now. Combating the misinformation and understanding and not just believing everything that is seen or heard or talked about. Talk to people that are actually in the community. Talk with members that work with members in the community. Take steps to learn and make changes for the better.
It's a heavy episode, but even just thinking about it, like like my dad, he's an immigrant, like he's from Nigeria. He came here, went to school. He's a doctor now, like has online journal, does lots of research, like contributes, I think, in very meaningful ways to the country. But then even just thinking, like, if he wasn't able to come here, stay here, or face some more barriers, I might not be here. So that in itself is just like, oh, that's how this affects me, like, or could have affected me. So I just really trying to like internalize and think about it, like how does this actually affect me or could have, which I don't think many people do, because I like before we talked, I didn't really think too much about it, and that's just like an awareness piece of like it's not at the forefront of my mind, but there's people here who are really being affected by what's going on or being said, with the current government. So
I think that's something that resonates from my previous work in the farm worker realm, is that it applies to exactly what you were talking about too. It's kind of like people know that there's food at the store and there's food that gets to their table, but nobody thinks of how the food got there or who picked that food or what was happening on the back end. And I think that a lot of our society is just so focused on, well, me and like here and what affects me. And if it doesn't affect them, then they're not really understanding the full scope of everything around them.
If you mentioned how many policy changes were there?
I believe it was 542 when I looked yesterday, but there actually probably have been some today. We're well over one a day.
Wow. If you could change one policy, doesn't have to be one of those, state or federal, that would have the greatest impact, what would that policy be?
Oh, I would change the registry date. So I'm going to nerd out on you, Jonathan, here. But there's a statute called registry. And right now you have to have lived in the U.S. continuously since 1972 to be eligible to apply for a green card through registry. So if you're undocumented, but you can prove, and by prove I mean come up with something for most months of every year since 1972, you can apply for a green card based on what's called registry. And actually, MIRC has done...
We just did one recently.
Yeah, MIRC has done at least a dozen registry cases in the last 17 years, even reaching back to 1972. We did one a couple of years ago for a woman who was a refugee, a post-war refugee from Ukraine, post-World War II refugee from Ukraine. But her mother was pregnant at the time the visas were issued, so no visa was issued for her. So she came in as a baby, but with no documents, just carried into the country. And she lived her whole life with no immigration status. Back then, you could get a Social Security number if you were someone's tax dependent, no big deal. And she was undocumented her whole life and didn't really realize it until she went to retire and get her Social Security benefits. And they said, you're not eligible. And in fact, you're undocumented. Wow. So we used registry for her. If you move that registry date up to something fairly recent, right, you can create a tremendous amount of justice for people who've been living here, raising their families, working, hoping for the chance to really become a full part of our society. So I would just move the registry date up.
I would have never thought of that response, but I love it.
Nerd.
I think I would have said something along the lines of making more meaningful pathways for legal status in the same way that you were doing. I just didn't go back that far. Because I think that that's also just part of the problem right now is to let people know about it. It's like even the limited minimal pathways that exist are so backlogged. Like there's one particular relief that you might be waiting 7 to 10 years to even know if you're going to get it approved or not. So I think that, yeah, that's what I would change. Noah. Yeah,
just echoing anything that can help with that backlog in the courts, as far as whether, it's more immigration judges or, asylum officers, things like that, I think are important changes that can help facilitate the greater process. So
we'll add one thing, too, to that, Jonathan. I think the top priority of our client communities in terms of public policy priorities has been access to driver's licenses and state ID, regardless of immigration status. And I think that's just a powerful example of how much people want to come forward, want to belong, want to have the ability to get kids to school, get to medical appointments without necessarily the threat of immigration enforcement. Unfortunately, we have not been able to move that policy in the state legislature, but I want to say it because I know that's what so many community members would say in answer to that question. Who aren't giant immigration law nerds like myself.
What would equitable access to legal representation truly look like if you could just paint a vision of it?
Well, I would certainly say guaranteed counsel for anyone who couldn't afford counsel in removal proceedings and any other proceeding before the immigration court, whether you're in custody or not. My husband is a defender over at Kalamazoo Defender, right? I think most people are used to that framework of if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. That doesn't apply in immigration proceedings because they're considered civil, not criminal. But so many of the consequences feel as harsh or worse, right, than and really do include jail time, right? If you're sitting in the Calhoun County Jail in ICE detention, it's the same jail. The only difference is you don't have a lawyer, and someone with a criminal charge does. And so certainly representation at government expense for those unable to afford counsel. And then really, again, just a system that could be re-envisioned to be understandable, to align with basic principles of fairness, to have a lot of the kind of discretion where you look at a whole person and you look at their whole life, maybe not just the one act of entering the U.S. without inspection, but their whole life, their whole story, their whole family, and the ability of decision makers to make holistic decisions about people rather than say, it doesn't matter that you've lived here your whole life. It doesn't matter, who you are or how you've lived. You entered unlawfully 20 years ago, so there's no immigration benefit for you in this situation. So those are the two pieces for me, representation and then building back just very basic principles of fairness that have been systematically stripped out of the system over decades.
I think the detention system plays a role in that too, because right now individuals, for what Susan was talking about, they could have lived here their whole life. And I mean, we're seeing that. You're seeing 80-year-old grandparents being picked up by ICE and placed indefinitely in for-profit detention centers without any ability to get post-bond or get bail or to be able to leave that facility. And it's not a quick process a lot of times with deportation. Individuals can be in those holding facilities for years. So I think also like that it needs a big overhaul too, because I don't think we could fathom that in any other setting. In a criminal setting, could you imagine you get arrested for anything and sorry, you just can't leave until we finally get around to your case? People would be outraged. But the same thing is happening right now to immigrants, and you don't see that same outrage.
It's designed to get people to give up.
What would you say to everyday community members who want to help? What would you tell them they could do?
I think the first thing people should do is subscribe to all of our social media so that they get action alerts, because there are new things all the time, and especially the state and local advocacy. There are new opportunities all the time, and we are winning at the state and local level on many questions. We are really supporting supporting immigrant communities, and immigrant communities are winning issues themselves by organizing. So I certainly would say get involved, follow along. I'm going to take that one. Sorry, guys.
That was a good answer.
I think there's also a lot of local groups that people can get involved with, too.
Mm-hmm. The Kalamazoo Immigrant Solidarity Coalition, the
Kalamazoo Refugee Resource Collaborative. Even in other local counties, too, there's similar, like the Berrien Immigrant Solidarity Network. So I think there's all sorts of things that already exist. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are people already actively doing these things.
It's good stuff. I've learned a lot just by having you guys come here and talk about all these things, because it's something that I don't, normally get to hear about or know what's going on. For young people who maybe want to go into this work, looking forward to the future, what advice would you give them as far as like what education they should get, what job opportunities they should look for, things like that?
I can start this one. So actually, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I knew I always wanted to be an attorney. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I think taking advantage of every level, there's a lot of, collaborations with local high schools now too, and different kind of programs or volunteering. Also, there's programs at the universities as well. And so while they're getting an undergraduate degree, which is the requirement to go to law school as well, look for those internship opportunities or placements in organizations. That's actually how I ended up with MIRC and FLS, Farm Career Legal Services, in the beginning, was through a placement at Western Michigan University.
Go Broncos.
Go Broncos. And then, also like for individuals that do make it to law school, like you don't need to go to the big shiny law schools. Like a law school is a law school. You really learn the law that you want to practice through practice afterwards, but take advantage of, again, the internships, the programs, the clinics, like all of those things exist. And as Susan mentioned, shout out to our website again. There's like pro bono opportunities listed on there for both attorneys, and there's some for non-attorneys. And so really just kind of checking with the advocates that are already doing the work and, is there something that you can do with them, or can they refer you to somewhere else? I think that's a kind of a pathway that I think makes sense too.
I think with the Department of Justice Accredited Representative Program that I'm a part of as well is a really good opportunity for young people that are thinking about law school, because it is sort of this middle ground where you have your own caseload, but you are under the supervision of an attorney. And so it really does give you that on-the-ground experience. And so I think that could, is an option for people that are interested possibly in that pre-law pathway.
Nice.
Yeah, we have so many amazing non-attorney advocates who are overwhelmingly bilingual and, really often have immigrant parents or are immigrants themselves who've been able to do such great practice for the community through that accreditation program. And I would just really lift that up as an opportunity that some organizations can offer to staff. Certainly language skills. My kids both went to El Sol and have really lovely Spanish and are continuing to work on their Spanish in KPS. And so pursuing those language skills. And then I would also just second what Elizabeth said. If you're in Kalamazoo, can get those language skills. You can, you're going to come out of college, hopefully with no tuition debt because you're going to use the promise. And then I would say if you want to do public interest work, we are not the kind of lawyers who make a lot of money. So there is loan forgiveness and there are creative ways to do it. But I kind of suggest keeping an eye on your debt load if you're going to go to law school and look for scholarships. So go excel with the promise and then get that great law school scholarship that'll leave you in a debt situation where you're free to do the kind of legal work that you want to with the community.
Pro tip for anyone thinking about law school, you can also request fee waivers from the law school to not pay the application fees.
Cool.
Okay, taking notes over here.
Yeah. Let's go, Jonathan. You can work at MIRC. We really need people for Kalamazoo.
Let's see. You already answered these questions. If you could change, this is a question I usually ask. If you could change one thing about Kalamazoo and nothing can get in the way, what would it be?
I think you might have stumped us on this question.
I don't know, Jonathan. I love it here. I mean, every night I say to my son, do you know what I would change about you? And
Nothing.
the answer is nothing. And maybe I would say that to Kalamazoo, except I would change, and obviously the promise is part of this, right? Like Kalamazoo is still a pretty segregated place. And there's so much good living here, but I would want everybody to be able to enjoy it in the same way and enjoy it together.
That's a good answer. No, you got anything?
Still, the cogs are still turning.
Yeah, we can come back to it. What do you love most about Kalamazoo? This is on the flip side. What do you like the most? It's perfect.
I love the arts in Kalamazoo, and I love how much I can enjoy the arts for like $15 when I go see something at Western, or just how I might get to go see a show at Farmer's Alley and know there's people I know in it. The incredible music opportunities here, and dance, and I just think we just have such an amazing arts community. I know it's like I'm trying to get my own podcast, but I really love the promise too, because I mean, we've been able to do things with our kids that otherwise we wouldn't have felt like we could do if we didn't know that we had college taken care of.
It is a barrier that's just kind of like removed. And it does make it possible if you want to go into a career that you're passionate about, but might not fund the lifestyle that you want to live. But then you think about, if I didn't have, student loans, if I didn't have a mortgage or different things like that, then it makes it more possible to just do what you wanted to do rather than what can I afford to do.
I went to law school in Minneapolis, and the Twin Cities are really exciting, and there's so much there. But when I came to visit Kalamazoo, I moved here in 2003. Went to a great coffee shop, went to a great restaurant, and went to a concert at the State. And when I really thought about it, I thought, Minneapolis has 100 great coffee shops, 500 great restaurants, and 50 great places to see a show, but I pretty much go to the same restaurant, the same coffee shop, and the same venue over and over. So I can just live in Kalamazoo, and it'll be nice and easy.
It's like the perfect size.
Yeah.
It's got the big city feel, but not like the big actual city feel. You got what you need. And so I came from like a small town in West Virginia. So to me, it's
pretty big.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
We're going to have to play this part of the podcast for our MIRC colleagues, because honestly, this is our office where maybe we could use a little help in recruiting.
Right.
And we all get paid the same statewide, but your money goes a lot farther in Kalamazoo. So anyone who can hear me, come on over.
Attorneys and paralegals, we got postings listed. So
Okay.
check that out on our website.
That's right.
All right. So I asked a lot of questions. Do you guys have any questions for us We only have 4 microphones, but maybe I'll switch out with Kane.
What have we said that has surprised you the most?
I think the part about kids not having representation. That, I mean, like you said, a lot of things that I just didn't know. But I think that one kind of like just like hit me like, what? That's not right. Most of what she said, I did, like I had a sense, like I had an idea. I've heard things on the news or, you know, different things from colleagues and friends and whatnot, but not to that extent. So I learned a lot.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that you wanted to talk about?
I think just keep the curiosity going. Keep learning. Keep asking questions.
Yeah, I think often we react to other people's stories, especially when there's an element of suffering or an element of just something that bothers us. And we think like, why did that person, they must be to blame in some way. Like it's a way of feeling safe. Like if they're suffering that much, maybe it's because they did something wrong. And maybe I'm safe because I won't make whatever mistake they made. And I find that to really be true about the system. I think a lot of people who maybe to some degree people of goodwill want to like look at what's happening to people and think they must have done something wrong. Or they must have done something that makes them in some way deserve that. And I guess I would just really say if you feel that impulse ever, lean out of it and see where that takes you. And certainly when it comes to these issues, and when it comes to what's happening in our country right now, if you feel that impulse to say, that person isn't acting rationally, or that person must have made a mistake, maybe work through it in your mind to say, what if they are making a rational decision based on the options before them, based on their situation? Or what if they really didn't do anything wrong? And let that open up your empathy a little bit. And that's the only way I see through this, because there's a lot of talking past each other and a lot of assumptions that get made. And so I'll try to do that too when I look at other situations that I don't know as much about as I know about this system. And I guess I would just invite others to do the same.
I think in that same reaction, Susan, also when you sit there and think, oh man, like why did they do that? Or how could they do that? Or all of those feelings that I think sometimes can happen. I think sometimes it's helpful to stop and think, how lucky am I that I don't have to understand or know what put that person in that position to make that decision?
Yeah. There's a lack of empathy that's allowing what's happening to our communities, to our immigrant communities to happen. And anything we can do to wake up and move past that together is valuable.
It's almost a sense of selfishness of, well, that they're taken away from me.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to think, right, of what? It's scary to think about being separated from your kids. So you watch other people get separated from their kids and you want to think maybe it's their fault. Try thinking something different, I guess.
Well, I like how you put all that together. I think that's a good place to stop at before I get emotional. Thank you so much for coming here, being on the podcast, educating us, and letting us know what's going on in our community.
Thank you,
Thanks so much
Jonathan.
for having
It was our
us.
pleasure.
Thank you much.
Thank you.